SparkMES, an MES Accelerator for Ignition.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar where we'll be exploring the quality package of Spark MES. My name is Ellie, and I'm a content marketing manager here at Flexware. A couple quick housekeeping notes before we get started. First, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to drop them in the questions panel at that top toolbar, and we'll answer them throughout as we can, and if not, we'll ask them all in the end. Secondly, we are recording today's webinar, so we'll be able to send out that link to you shortly after we wrap up. And then finally, we're scheduled for an hour-long webinar today, but if we wrap up early, we'll give you some time back into your day. So now that that's all out of the way, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Today I'm joined by Eric Moorman. He's an architect of Spark MES, and he's been with Flexware for just over 6 years. Eric, take it away.
Thanks, Ellie. Hey, everybody. So today what we're planning to do is to continue on the web series we've had for the last couple webinars of going through and kind of exploring all of the different packages of SparkMES. If you did miss them previously, we've done an overview of SparkMES as a whole. We've done an overview of the track and trace, and then also an overview of the OEE packages. And today we're going to take that another step and start looking at one of our other packages, that is our quality package. Our quality package is much smaller than our OEE and track and trace package, but it still does have a lot of functionality that could be very useful to have, and it also supplements the functionality that we've talked about in the previous videos with the track and trace and the OEE packages, especially the track and trace package. So with that, so what are we really looking at when we're talking about the quality package? Because that can mean a lot of different things. So when we're looking at quality package, there's really three different items that we're talking about. So first is failure analysis. So by failure analysis, what we mean is having, when you have parts that are running down the line or parts that are in inventory or wherever they may be, and you detect that something's wrong with them and you want to be able to set them off to the side and do different checks on them to analyze what's going on with them, right? Or if maybe something fails and you want to set it aside to analyze what's going on. I know sometimes this is called like a material review board as well. There's lots of different terminologies that get used with this. The second part, well, I guess, and kind of going along with that is the bottom one here, which is part dispositioning. Once you've done the different checks with it, then you want to be able to say, okay, well, this part is good, or this part is, we need to return it to the supplier, right? Or this part needs to be scrapped, or it needs to be reworked, or whatever, right? Whatever your dispositioning may be, you want to make sure that you can track that both for historical purposes and make sure that it goes through the correct processes to get that disposition applied. And lastly, the other part that we're going to talk about is the inventory quality checks. And this has to do with how do we verify that the inventory we're getting in the door actually abides by our standards, right? Maybe you're having issues of getting material that isn't good, or maybe you just need to have extra checks to make sure that the material getting in the door is good. This part of the system and the quality package would let you do different tests and stuff and verify that things are looking good before the material can ever be used. So we'll take a look at both of these as we're going through the video today. Lastly, just a couple questions that you may be asking yourself that may lead you, or maybe things you're looking for that may lead you to wanting the quality package or wanting to explore it further. So maybe you need to track information about quality tests being done on a part, right? You need to say, hey, I know that we pull things offline, we do tests. I need that data for like auditing purposes or something like that, right? I need to know that quality inspection parts are not getting used on the line, not getting shipped out the door, mainly, especially shipped out the door, right? Maybe you have issues of things accidentally getting shipped out when they were never actually approved by quality. This could be something that can help with that. How often, just getting some information about like how often are parts going to quality inspection? Do we need to start looking at like what processes are sending things to quality inspection the most, right? Or failure analysis, or whatever term you want to use for it. How can I allow my quality engineers to disposition parts and track that, as we talked about? And then lastly, how do I ensure that the parts received from my suppliers meet our company standards so that we're getting the best foot forward when we're starting to actually build our materials, right? Or build our assemblies that we're building. So, uh, so that's a real quick overview of the quality package. Didn't want to spend too long on the PowerPoint. Now I'm going to hop into the UI and we can start taking a look at some of the different things that this can do. Well, maybe. There we go. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about and walk through is the failure analysis process. So the failure analysis process is very tightly coupled. It can be standalone, right? But it is also very tightly coupled to both our track and trace package and our inventory package. The failure analysis process has everything to do with how do I take something that's in WIP or something that's in inventory, and I want to mark it as bad. And while that's bad, or I say quality inspect is maybe a better term for it, right? While that is in quality inspection, I want to make sure that it doesn't get used for anything, right? We want to make sure that it's very controlled as to where it can go. So from here, when you're using track and trace, right, we can do things like marking a part as quality inspect and then making sure that it doesn't run on the line anymore. Somebody tried to scan on the line, we're going to say, nope, can't do it. Sorry about you. You can't ship it out the door, right? You can't pack it off the line. None of that stuff is able to be done with the track and trace package if you have something in quality inspection. And same thing with the inventory package. You can't ship things out the door that are quality inspect. And you can also even limit where things can go in your facility depending on if it's quality inspect or not, right? So if something's quality inspect, you probably don't want it to get to your like line side inventory and stuff like that, right? So you can have lots of different controls about this. What I'm going to walk through today is the track and trace flow, right? But it's very similar to the inventory flow as well, and kind of show you some of what this looks like. So if you remember from the last webinar we did, I am on the execution screen here. I can choose one serial over here. I'll just choose, I don't know, maybe we'll just go with this one. This is fine. And so then I'm on my execution screen, right? So this is where your operator would be executing stuff. Now while they're executing their assembly, they realize that, oh yeah, there's something that we want to have, that there's something that I notice that's wrong, right? Maybe I failed a test, maybe I'm just eyeball seeing something that's going wrong. I want to kick this off into failure analysis, nonconformance, something like that, right? So down here, there's this button on the screen where they can do a nonconformance, and there's two different types of nonconformances. You can do offline or you can do inline. Essentially, the only difference is offline would be that, hey, I'm taking some of my line side materials. These are things that are just in inventory, raw goods, and I'm going to put nonconformance on those. That's the inventory side of it. And then there's this inline is the WIP, right? These are things that are being processed by track and trace in WIP. You know, need to have like routing restrictions put on them, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and say inline. And so this is going to fill up a form for the operator to fill out. So this is what the operator would be doing. So you're kind of going to get a limited set of like, hey, why is the operator actually telling me that this needs to go to nonconformance or to failure analysis? So we have a couple of different things in here that you can fill out. This whole form here is completely dynamic, right? It's all just populated from the database. So this is very easy to change. But the stuff I have here, operator could go in and say, oh yeah, this is a packaging and labeling error. So they want it to be routed to failure analysis. And maybe they're going to say this is a low priority, right? Not something that needs to happen, right? Fixed right away. We can allow for uploading attachments. Maybe if they want to upload like a picture of what's going on, that could be something they want to do. So they can provide that context. Maybe they upload test data, something like that. And then they could just give a description. The label didn't, I don't know, print right. I don't know, whatever it may be, right? And what they're troubleshooting, what have they already done to try to fix it? Not much, right? So the operator would fill out this form, and then from here, they could just hit commit and confirm. And what that's going to do is you'll notice that we did cake batter order 3. It no longer shows up in our serial list. If you remember from the track and trace webinar, this list over here shows all of the active assemblies that can, or batches that can be run at this line or at this station. Now that it's in quality hold, it does not show up here anymore because it's not able to be run here anymore. It's now in quality hold. So what happens is now that this has been kicked off to go to quality hold, what that's going to do is that's going to send out an email to anybody who's tied to a notification to get those kind of notifications. And they'll get an email and say, hey, something just got signed into failure analysis. And so you need to actually go look at it, right, and do something with it. And so then the quality engineer would take that and they would be in this new view here, which is the ticket grid. So now we're out of the operator space, we're into a new workspace, which is the quality engineer, right? So your quality engineer here can see all the different tickets. Let's go ahead and refresh this, and you'll see here that our ticket shows up for our new one that we just made. Currently, this ticket is unassigned. The ticket name is auto-generated just based on the data you entered. And we can see that it just it's currently in the pending state. So it's kind of waiting for something to be done with it. If I want to see information about this ticket, I could just click on it, and this will bring up a doc with information about it. Now, one thing you'll notice here on this doc is there's a lot more fields and a lot more things that we can enter about the ticket, because now we're the quality engineer doing all the tests and all of that fun stuff, right? So they are going to have more granular stuff that where they're going to want to log for historical purposes. So if we're looking at this, you can change the ticket name if you wanted to make it something more fun. You can change the status of the ticket. So we have 4 different statuses. We have pending, hasn't been dealt with yet. In progress, somebody's actively working on it. On hold means we're just kind of setting it off to the side for now. And then completed would be that it is finished and it's been dispositioned and it's essentially out of the system, right? So I could go ahead and say through here, like maybe I want to put this as in progress. So I'm going to say, okay, we're marking it as in progress, and I'm going to go ahead and assign a user to it. Maybe I'll assign myself to it. And then I can also, I could put some more attachments on it as well. So if I want to upload my own pictures, my own test documents, my own whatever, I can do that. So maybe I'll go in here and upload. Oh, there we go. Maybe I'll upload this little text document. And so that'll show up a little text document. You can have multiple different attachments on this ticket, as many as you need to have to actually show what you want to show. And we can assign a due date to it if we wanted to as well, but I'm not gonna worry about that too much. And then if I were to hit commit, and it would then move the ticket down here into my name, and it would move it to in progress. And then also I would get an email to say like, hey, you have a ticket assigned to you and you need to go adjust it, right? You need to go deal with it with a link to that ticket. So with that, now that we have the ticket in progress, we still need to actually be processing the ticket. And so we need to actually start doing the different tests or doing whatever you're doing with it, right? When you're using the failure analysis tool, it's not really anything that's too prescriptive about what you need to do, but it's kind of giving you a place to log everything that you're actively doing so that we keep it for historical purposes. So if I click back in here, you probably noticed on the right, there's this form component over here, or not this form component, that's actually a thing now. This form over here of different data that you can enter about this non-conformance, this failure analysis ticket. The field over here has a bunch of different parameters in it. You can see that some of them are locked. These are just metadata fields. You're not allowed to update them, but they're just giving you some context about the part that you're actively looking at. Some of them have this little required symbol, so this means that we have to fill this out in order to complete the ticket. Right now, the only field that we're requiring is the disposition. Everything else is not required. And you can just see all the data in here, right? If I wanted to update one of these, I can update any of these fields. So let's say I wanted to say, oh, I don't like their description. I could say labeled in print, I don't know, correctly, whatever you want to say there. Every time you adjust the field here, a value in this form, you have to give a comment about why. Why am I updating this, right? Because I can. And then I can save that update. Okay, and that's going to update it in here. Now, every change that happens is audited, so I can also go back to this field and I can hit edit history and I can see what all it was. So it started out as the label didn't print right, and then at 1:14 today, I updated it. I updated it to label didn't print correctly, and then the comment was because I can, right? So we're auditing every change that happens, so we can again at the end of it you could see everything that ever happened to this part while it was going through failure analysis, because these processes can sometimes take a while, right? So you want to make sure you're actually getting all the right data with it. And that's true with all these different fields. So some of the fields have different options. So this one's just a text entry. If I go down to like disposition, then here we may have like a drop down that we need to assign to it with this finite set of dispositions that we can use. And again, this is our out of the box disposition list, but you can certainly we can certainly add more for any implementation. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and say that I want to return it to the line. So I'm just going to say use as is. This is fine. Go ahead and save that. I think I also need to give it a return location and say that I want to return it to ingredient staging. Yeah, ingredient staging. And then I'm going to hit save. Okay. So I'm just saying I'm going to return it to line. I'm saying where I'm going to return it to on the line. And so just filling out the form that way, right? So again, I could be doing as many form updates as I wanted to here just to get the data that I need to track for failure analysis. There's also a place on here too for just more general comments. This is kind of like almost like a texting thread sort of thing, right? Or a forum thread or whatever. Um, you know, I looked at this and didn't see anything, right? And I could just go ahead and enter my message plus, then hit confirm. And then there we go. Now my message shows up here. I have one comment with my name and date. And again, this will just keep adding to the list and you'd have a list of comments that are getting added to it. So again, you can just track chatter around it as you're kind of moving through here. So that's really everything you can do with a ticket inside of the failure analysis board here, or the ticket grid. Just a lot of data entry, a lot of like tracking what's going on with it, making sure we're historizing everything for the reporting purposes or quality purposes or whatever. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to go and take this ticket, mark it as completed, and if I hit commit, that's going to move this ticket to completed. And when I completed that ticket, since I also marked it as returned to line or used as is, I think is the disposition. Then if I head back to the station execution, and if I refresh, then you'll see that my the serial shows back up here. If I click on the serial again, then you'll see I'm just back where I'm going. It's almost like nothing happened. The only thing you'll see here is I have this little Band-Aid icon. That this is just showing that, hey, this got a nonconformance at this step, right? So it's more information for the operator that if they see that, they know that something has went wrong there previously or been identified there previously. Yeah, and so that's really the failure analysis process of the system. Like I said, a similar process can be followed from inventory, where you would just go out to your warehouse or whatever and scan a lot that doesn't look quite right, and then you'd fill out the same kind of form. But I'm not going to walk through that here today. Yeah, so that's half of the quality package. That is the failure analysis part of it. So now what I want to do is I'm going to switch over to the other half, right? So we talked about failure analysis and how we can take things off the line, do quality inspections, record all the data, all of that fun stuff. Now I want to talk about how we can do inventory quality checks, where we can make sure that the inventory we're getting in the door, or I guess really with a small extension, wouldn't even have to be inventory that's coming in the door, where we can, again, mark these parts as like inventory quality inspect, run different tests on them, and then decide whether we want to send those out to inventory or not. So to do that, first there's some configuration that needs to take place. So when you're doing these kind of quality checks, right, this is a much more prescriptive flow where we actually allow for you to build routes of how you want to do your different quality tests, right? So this is much more prescriptive quality test that needs to happen. You need to do A, then B, and then C, and you need to record this data at A, this data at B, and this data at C. So this screen here is where we actually can configure those different tests. If you tuned in for the track and trace version of this, or you watched it on YouTube or whatever, then this should look very familiar because this is actually how we do it, very similar to how we do our track and trace routing as well. Although I don't know that I got into it too much. So in here, I can configure my different tests. I just have one test here which I just realized I didn't change the name of, which is fine. So I can have one test in here. I could add another test if I wanted to as well. So I could have these different tests that I want to run. Each test is version controlled, right? So I just have one revision of this test and this one just got created. So I can track and make updates to it and see all of the revision history of this test and the protocols you do for the test and all that fun stuff as you're going along. Inside of each test, you add a station. So you have a station that just says, hey, where is this happening at? Like, where is this different test going? So maybe you have a test that takes place at two different test stations. Like you do something over here and then move it over here and do another something over there. This is where you could have more than one station if you wanted to, but I just have one station here to keep it simple. And then you can define below it, what are all the steps or what are all the things you need to do while you're at that station. In this case, what I'm doing here is I'm doing some process data. I'm doing a process data read. So I'm reading in a torque value. So I'm asking them to take some sort of torque, and I'm asking them to give me the value of it. Now, I didn't do this in this case, but you could also add limits to this if you wanted to, where you could say like, oh, I need you to read the torque, and the torque has to be greater than 5, right? If the torque is less than 5, then we would fail that part for IQC, right? We would need to the inventory check, right? And we would need to test another part, right? Or redo the check or something like that. All that's fine. But you can have as many process data reads as you wanted to here to have the operator enter as much information as you want. And yeah, you just be gathering all the data about it before the part gets released from IQC. Yeah, so I'd go in here. This route's pretty simple. Like I said, one step in the process, just recording a torque value. This could get as complicated as you need it to be. But now that I have my test defined, or tests, or however many tests you end up wanting to have for these, now I need to go say, hey, when do I need to do these, right? Because you don't always probably want to do the IQC test. Maybe you do, but maybe also your tests change depending on what part it is, right, that you want to execute the test on. So in that case, what we can do is I'm going to hop to another screen here. This is our part configuration screen. So we've configured our tests in the system. Now I'm going to say that, hey, whenever we receive, I'm going to use the bolts here. Whenever we receive one of these bolts, then I want to do an IQC test on it, right? And I want to make sure that those bolts are good. And I want to run my torque test on it, which doesn't really make a lot of sense with the part number I said, but that's fine. So I'm going to choose my part number here that I want to do IQC tests on. I'm going to go ahead and hit the edit pencil. And then I am going to hop over to the IQC tab. And I've already configured my IQC tests for this part. But you can see here that I can choose what tests that I want to do. So I only had, if you remember over here, I only had one active test. But if I had multiple, then they would show up in this list. And you can choose one to many tests that you want to do. So maybe there's 2 of these tests that you've made that you want to run every time this part number gets received. That's perfectly fine. You would just specify both here. This is a multi-select dropdown. I'm just going to choose one for now, right? To say that I just want to do my thickness test whenever this part number is received. And then the other part of this too is saying, hey, what parts, how many parts do you want to test, right? Because you probably, when you're doing quality checks, especially if the box of parts you're receiving is huge, like let's say there's like 200, 300, 400 parts in it, you may not want to check every single part. You just kind of want to do a spot check of it, right? To make sure that a certain number of components are good in it. And if a certain number is good, then you're just going to call the whole thing good, right? Save time, get no check. So this is where you can say how many parts in what we're receiving or what we're testing of this part number should we apply these tests to. And you can either do that by saying, 50%, or you can do a solid number too, a static number too, right? So you could say 50%, 100%, or you could say, I don't care how big the box is, I want to test 5, right? A static number of them, 5, 10, right? So you can kind of change that configuration however you want to make sure we're testing the right number of parts from it. One thing just to comment a little bit further on that, that amount of parts has to pass, right? So if you were to fail one, right? If one part were to fail, but then I still have 50% that passed, then technically that would still be a pass. There's some rules you can look at of like if you want to then scrap that one part that failed or not. Typically, it's just, hey, if we failed one, but we had 50% of the box passed, you're good to go. So, yeah, you can set that up however you want to. I'll also say too that if you have multiple tests configured up here, so let's say I have 4 tests, then if I say 50% of parts have to go through it, then the same part has to go through all 4 tests. You can't have like half of them that go through 2 of the tests and half to go through the other 2 tests. At least that's the out of the box functionality, right? Is you'd have to take the same part through all 4 tests. It'd have to pass all of them before that part would be counted as good. So again, just the out of the box functionality there. Okay, great. So we've configured our test. We've configured the part number to then run the tests, right? To say that, hey, we need to actually do this. Now, what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go receive some inventory. Actually, I'm going to go and copy this part number. So I'm going to go and receive some inventory. So this is our inventory package, which we will talk about soon. In here, I'm going to just go ahead and receive what I want to receive. So I'm going to go ahead and scan the part number. So I'm scanning the box part number of what I'm receiving in the door. I'm going to go ahead and scan that lot number, which we'll say is that, because why not? I could enter any metadata I want, such as expiration date, but maybe there's other metadata you want to enter about it that would show up here. And then I can say how many parts are in the box. I'm going to go ahead and do 6, right? This could be 100 if you want it to be. It doesn't matter. But for the sake of time, I'm going to say there's going to be 6. And now if I look in inventory type, it is going to require me to set it to IQC. So inventory type, maybe I'll show this in a second here. There's lots of inventory types inside of SparkMES. So this tells you like what is the state of that box or that lot in inventory. There's standard, which is good. There's quality review, all that fun stuff, right? But now, since this part number had quality tests configured on it for IQC, I have to say it's IQC. I don't have an option. It has to go to IQC when you receive it. So I'm going to choose that, and then I'm going to go ahead and go over here and just say where I want to put it. So I'm going to say I'm going to put this box here, which is fine. And then I am going to actually copy this out for later. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit commit. And so that's going to then receive that inventory into the system. If I go over to my view inventory, you'll see that it received that lot, and the inventory type of it is IQC. So it's now in inventory as IQC, and since it has that IQC flag, very similar to quality hold, this inventory cannot be used on the line. It cannot be consumed in anything on the line. It cannot be shipped out the door. You can also filter where it can go in the plant based on the fact that it's IQC. And the other thing I should have done too, and let's see if I got it here. Sorry, I need to assign it to myself. If I go over here, so now if I go to my quality workstation again, as soon as I receive that inventory, now if I'm in my IQC route execution screen, you'll see that I get this item showed up here, right? Where it says, hey, for this box, I need to have a sample size of 3. I need to do 3 samples. I've so far done 0, had 0 completed, 0 failed, and 0 tests are going on, and all that fun stuff. I can then assign this to somebody. So I'm going to go and assign this to myself. And okay, well, it looks like our mail server is down. That's cool. All right, well, I would get an email if the mail server wasn't down, so that's fun. That would send off an email to then let me know that I was going to that I have this ticket assigned. It would give me a link that I could go to here and then easily be able to start executing my tickets. I could also filter it to see only the ones that are assigned to me if I wanted to. So now that I have this ticket, right, so this quality test, this inventory quality test is set up, right? It's now ready for me to go. So I can say, okay, I'm going to execute this. So I'm going to go and begin the test. I can see that my lot size or my box size is 6. Here's the lot number that I'm testing, and I need to take 3 samples from the lot. From the drop down here, this is very similar to the execution screen. So again, if you saw the track and trace webinar last week or last 2 months ago, whenever it was, a lot of this will look very familiar. But I need to choose what station am I at, right? Because again, maybe this test takes place at several different stations. Which station am I at right now that I'm going to be executing this part at? So I'm going to choose, this is the location I chose for it, just a random location. And now what I can do is I can start scanning or giving identifiers to the components that are inside of that box that I want to test. Spark does not know of any of these components ahead of time, so you're kind of, well, I guess it could have if you would have scanned them in the inventory workstation if you were scanning serialized components. But I need to start scanning these and it'll create them in the system, right? So I'm going to scan a random serial number here, just typing some random junk, and go and hit enter. So the serial is not, no match found, the serial is not been. Do I want to add this? So just confirming that, yep, this serial is good. I'm going to hit confirm. And it's going to add it to the list over here to where I can then say, okay, now I'm running this test on this part, the serial number. If I wanted to have this show work instructions, I could have configured work instructions on the test to have work instructions show here. I got my one step in the test, so I'm just doing a torque test here, but if I had more than one step in it, you would have multiple circles on here. And then here it's asking me for my torque value. So remember how I configured it to ask for a torque value? This is where that's actually prompting me to enter that information. So I can go in here and I can just say, oh yeah, it was 15, we'll say. And then I can say complete operation. All operations are completed. Do I want to complete this station or this test essentially? I'm gonna hit confirm and then boom, lot test part completed. It's now checked off. The serial disappeared from over here and we're good to go. That's one down. So now I can go ahead and I can just do the other ones. Just same thing, not much to really talk about here, I guess. So I did 2 there. So now let's do my third one. All my lovely serial numbers. All right, so this is my last one. So since this is my third one, so I've done 2 now, right? They both passed. Now that I've done 2 of them, that I need to, once I complete this third one, I'll now have hit my sample quantity. Because if you remember, I made the lot size 6. Since the part number said it was 50% test, my sample size became 3. So as soon as I complete this one, this would then complete this IQC test. And so what's going to happen here is if I hit complete operation, yep, it's going to say lot test complete and then move me back out onto this main view. Which now I don't see a test anymore because I've completed all my tests, so I don't have to deal with it anymore. But if we wanted to take a look back at some of the tests that we've completed, I could do that by hitting this little check mark over here. And if I go to, oh gosh, which one we just do? I think we did this one, right? Yeah, that timestamped, right? So I can see that, hey, this one's been completed for this box number. Sample size was 3, we completed 3 tests. If I wanted to see information about these tests, I could then hit this magnifying glass and I can see the serial numbers of everything that I tested. Right, so I can see all the different serial numbers that they completed. It would show every single test that it went through. So right now I just did a thickness test, so it says completed, but if I did other tests, it would show a column for every test. And then in the process data side over here, I can see all of my tests. And then inside of them, I can see all of the different process data, right? So I can see, look back at all of the data that was actually gathered that got this part to pass. This is all downloadable and all that fun stuff as well, right? So you kind of have all this data for historical purposes. So maybe if a raw material ends up being found out as bad, you could go look to see if it actually was used in the test, right? Or what materials were, what materials were checked and what the data was that actually got that lot passed of the raw materials. So all of that is captured for auditing purposes or whatever.
Quick question for you,
Yeah.
Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Can a barcode scanner be used to read the barcode to scan the serial number? So if they're not a barcode, can one be assigned at this point?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that's what IQC would really do. If you're looking at barcode scanners, so there's 2 different ways to think about barcode scanner, right? So one is if you're thinking about using like a handheld scanner. A lot of times, the handheld scanners will function just like keyboard wedges, right? So just how I was manually typing it into that text box, you also could have just scanned it, and that would put it in there. If you're talking about like a mounted barcode scanner, when I'm configuring this on the route here, when I'm configuring my operation, I can assign ignition tags to say that this ignition tag is going to give me the serial number, right? So you would take that mounted scanner, you take what tag that's giving ignition for the serial number, and you just select that serial number here. And then that would let you automatically, start the tests and progress the test, right? You wouldn't even need any human intervention like I was doing. So,
Great, thank you.
yeah. All right. And really, that's about, oh, I guess one thing I'll show over here too, if I refresh over here, you'll see that now sorry, I said over here. I'm back in the inventory workstation, back on my view inventory screen. In here, I can see that lot that we were looking at just a second ago. And if you remember before it was IQC, now it's standard, right? So since we completed all the tests that said, yep, we're good. It completed it now and moved it to good again. So now you're good to take this box and you can then consume it wherever you want. You could receive it. I mean, not receive it, you received it. You could ship it out the door, consume it, all that fun stuff. And you'll also notice too that we went ahead and since you scanned the serial numbers here, we went ahead and identified those serial numbers as being inside that box. So it's just providing more metadata as well, just so we have that context later on, just using what data we have. Yeah, and I think that's really all there is to IQC. So again, we configured our tests, we received the parts, we said what part numbers we wanted to do the tests on. Oh, I guess I said really quick, I said I would show you um, what happens if the part number doesn't have IQC tests on it, right? Just to show you that I'm not lying. Um, and we'll talk about this more in the inventory one, but you can see we have all these different inventory types that you would have if this was not IQC, right? So we forced it to be IQC, but you would have a lot of other options if this was not have IQC tests on it. So we made sure that the part had IQC on it. We routed it to IQC. We did the appropriate tests to make sure everything was happening on it, and then we approved it to be good on the line. So again, both sides of these just have to do with making sure that we can do the appropriate quality tests on the parts that we have to make sure that they're actually good to be running on the line and making sure we're tracking all the data for auditing purposes. Yeah, so I think with that, I think that really covers everything about the quality package that I wanted to cover today. Hopefully you kind of saw how it interacts with some of the other packages inside of Spark to build this like cohesive solution that you can use. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions in the chat, Ellie.
Yes, a couple other quick questions for you. First, how easy is it to customize what non-conformance fields show up on an FA ticket?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I go over here to the ticket grid, so I think what you're referring to here is these fields over here, right? So there's a lot of fields over here that you can enter this information. All of this is dynamically populated from the database. So it takes like, you know, less than a minute to add a new field to this if you wanted to. That includes setting it as required or setting it as locked or however you want, or setting what the input type is, what the options are. All of that is completely dynamic. So it's dynamically populated, so it's very easy to change what data points are showing up in here.
Awesome. And then one other one for you. Can my IQC tests read from test equipment instead of just manual?
Yeah, so this kind of goes along with what we were talking about a second ago. So the question about the barcodes, right? Talking about being able to trigger from a barcode scanner, right? A mounted scanner maybe, and having to enter the data. The same kind of thing can happen where you can do with data capture. So we talked about in track and trace a little bit of how you could have it be completely headless. Your IQC test can be completely headless too, which is pretty cool. So like in here, if I were to over here right now, I just did read from operator, right? Which means I'm going to ask the operator to give me this information. I could also say read from device. And if I say read from device, same way with the serial, I'm then going to choose, hey, what tag in the tag layer is going to give me this piece of process data, right? And so then when the end trigger goes off, then I could then say, oh, the end trigger went off. I need to record the data. automatically capture from the equipment what the data was, right? And so this is kind of how you can get that data recorded automatically. The same kind of thing can happen too. We also can write to device as well. So if you want us to do like configurations and setups for your test stations based on the part number that you're testing or whatever, we can also write data to those test stations as well to make sure they're configured and set up properly. So yeah, all of this can run completely headless as well through the equipment. Do limit checks and all that fun stuff as it's going along. Do one-time reads, do continuous reads, all that fun stuff. Basically, get the whole power of track and trace, except for consumptions when you're doing your IQC tests. So.
Great. Well, that's all the questions we had. So thanks, Eric, for your time today and for teaching us all about the quality package of Spark MES. And thank you all for joining us today. Hope you're walking away with some insights that you can take back to your team. If your company is currently using Ignition and is looking for a quick and cost-effective path to MES functionality, feel free to reach out to us. We can get you scheduled with a personalized Spark MES demo. And if you'd like to do that, you can email me directly at ellie.allenbathe@flexware.com, or you can reply to the email that we'll send you out shortly after today's webinar with that recording link. So you can reply directly there if you'd like to talk to our team about anything Spark MES related. And then also, if you're interested in learning more about some of these other Spark MES packages, you can find the webinars that we've previously done on YouTube. And we have an upcoming one on the inventory management package, like Eric mentioned. So that'll be on October 22nd. So if you'd like to get registered for that, you can head over to flexwareinnovation.com/events. And we hope to see you there. But that's everything. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.
SparkMES, an MES accelerator for ignition.